Well, good. Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Rand. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Howard Hanna Rand Realty, the Executive Director of the Broker Public Portal. Welcome and good to have you with us here at the RISMedia Broker Webinar Series. And our topic today is how to handle tech overload and choose what will work for agents. I'm the moderator for this, but I've got a wonderful set of panelists, and I hope you'll join me. We're going to talk for a little bit. We're going to take questions. So if you have questions, there's a place on go to webinar control panel, which you can pull down and ask a question. We'll get to it probably a little ways into the presentation. But let me introduce our people who are panelists today. Absolutely terrific group. We have Gretchen Pearson, the president and owner of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Drysdale Properties. We have Tiffany Curry, the CEO and owner of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Tiffany Curry Real Estate. And we have Brad Nix, the COO and owner of Path and Post Real Estate. Those are our three panelists, and this webinar is brought to you by Boomtown, whose virtual events manager, Bridget Bauer, is here, and I'm going to ask her the first question to lead us into this discussion of tech overload, which is just simply open-ended. Bridget, tell us a little bit about what Boomtown's up to and what kind of programs are going on right now.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Joe. And thank you, RISMedia, for having us and allowing us to sponsor this webinar. We're excited for it. I've been with Boomtown for a little over 10 years now, and I've seen the company grow for quite a while. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with Boomtown, we are a fully comprehensive lead management system that is comprised of multiple verticals. So we'll build you a consumer-facing IDX website, we'll generate leads to that website, which then all translates and funnels into a back-end CRM where you are able, as the broker, to track all behavioral search data for anyone that's searching for real estate on your website. Also allows you to manage your team and your agents and see who is following up on their leads, what tasks need to be done, and a general bird's eye view analytics dashboard of how your company is doing. But we exist really to make sure that real estate agents are successful, and we offer multiple packages that are fit for anyone along the growth pattern of being in real estate. So we're really flexible, and we have multiple offerings that are meant to grow and scale with you and your business. So if you're just starting out and have a few agents, we have a platform for you. And if your goal is to move up and have multiple brokerages, we have platforms for you in that regard as well. But we're excited to be here. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Boomtown, you can visit this link and we'd be happy to give you a little product tour. We also have Brad Nix joining us today on this panel, who is a Boomtown user. So thanks for being here, Brad, as well as Gretchen and Tiffany. Thank you for joining the webinar.
Yeah, and I just want to say I'm not paid to say anything. I'm not even paid to be here. I'm here as to volunteer for my friends at RIS, who are very nice and honor me with the opportunity to moderate some of these webinars sometimes. But I will just say, Bridget, I mean, we have not personally met before, but I've heard lots of people in the industry using Boomtown with great effect. And since you already mentioned Brad, we're not going to be talking for the whole hour about Boomtown. We're going to talk about tech overload. But one of the questions I wanted to ask Brad, Gretchen, and Tiffany was just generally about the technologies they use to get a sense of how technology infuses their business. So I'll start with Brad, since you mentioned him and you mentioned that Boomtown's one of the programs he uses, and then we'll talk to Gretchen and Tiffany with the same question. So Brad, you started Path and Post about 9 years ago. What are some of the indispensable technologies you rely on?
Yeah, obviously Boomtown. And hi, Joe. Hi, Gretchen, Tiffany, Bridget. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Boomtown's a key component in our tech stack. We would call Boomtown our front office. It's where we engage with our consumers. It's where our agents spend the majority of their time. We have a saying, if it's not in Boomtown, it didn't happen. It is our core documentation place. But we also have some back office software. We use BrokerMint to manage transactions, focus specifically on like compliance and commission management as an independent brokerage. So I would say those two core pieces are essential, Boomtown and Brokerment, but there are several other pieces that we use to manage. Basically, we have a physical footprint, but no one goes there. It's almost like a co-working space for an office. So real estate's the original remote industry. So we're managing conversations in Slack and to replace email and text messages, to streamline workflow in the back office amongst the team. It's another key piece of tech in our tech stack. So I'd say, to keep it simple without going into all the tangents, it's those three key things. We talk to each other in Slack, we manage clients and agents in Boomtown, and transactions and commissions in Brokerment.
All right. Well, good. Thank you for the overview. We'll dig into some of the hows and whys and all that in a little bit. Gretchen, or let me start with Tiffany. Tiffany, same question. You became the first African-American to be 100% owner of a Berkshire Hathaway Home Services real estate company 2 years ago. Congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment. What are some of the technologies you've used to start up your new company in Houston?
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks RISMedia and Joe. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to sit on this panel because I love the people that I see. I've met Gretchen a couple of years ago. Just phenomenal woman in what she's doing in her company. So very inspired by that. So starting out, I'm a startup brokerage. So coming out of the gates, the number one thing for me was to be a great steward of finances. So I will tell you, as a startup brokerage, or as a new brokerage, or as a small brokerage, the first thing you want to do is take care of the finances. So we have been up for about 2.5 years, and what's been remarkable is we have finished every month in the black. There's not one month that we have gone in the red, and the main component of that, I would thank COVID-19, because 2 months after I started, we were going home because of COVID, and we had no idea what that was. So immediately, everything I thought I was going to do, we did not do. We did an immediate shift, and we decided to take everything hybrid, and we decided to take everything online so that the agents can function that way. So I'm a firm component of leveraging what you already have. So a couple things that we had, I know under Berkshire Hathaway, I've always used the iPad presentation instead of the big presentation, and we converted that through a software and through a system called with Prezi. Where we do digital listing presentations, where we were able to save on printing a bunch of stuff and a bunch of books and mailing them or sending them out when we couldn't meet people in person. So we started to send things out digitally. And that was the driving force for us. And it was something that we recognized that the clients actually love and we still use today. So that's one of the big things for us.
I missed when you said it, but there was some glitch. I didn't quite catch it. What's the name of the company that you used to create the digital listing presentation?
We're using Prezi.
Probably used Prezi. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you used and Prezi is a general interest presentation software. I've used it for like slide decks and things like that. It's really very creative the way it's set up. So you're the first person I've heard use it for listing presentations, though. That's unusual. So well done. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So it's worked really well because we love that it looks so different. If you've used it before, so it's eye-catching. So that's always progressive for people coming in. And the other thing we've used are video. BombBomb is really big for us, doing YouTube and sending private links to clients, introducing the agents. We believe in lifestyle marketing. We believe it's not all about the sale. We want the client for longevity. And in order to do so, it's about more than just that one sale. It's about the community. It's about our charities. It's about all of those things. So we're actively engaged with BombBomb and YouTube private links, sending out to our clients in our database to stay connected during and after the sale. One of the biggest things that we loved was during the pandemic, a lot of resources were flying around and people didn't really know what to do with those. We didn't know what to do. We found out what to do and we started doing videos, short videos, series, and sending them out to clients. And so people saw us different and were sending us business because of that. So that has been great for us, is doing that. Communication with our agents, I would say don't overspend. That's the number one thing that we've seen in brokerage. So I'm in Houston, and in 2019, I came up December 20th of 2019, but just before that, 3 major companies within 90 days in Houston that were all reporting over $1 billion in sales were out of business. This is before pandemic. That's a big thing. 3 companies all doing over $1 billion in sales were out of business. So the first thing that I looked at, well, what was the issue with that? And it's the basic general economics. It's finance. You know, if you're spending more than you're making and you're buying the latest and greatest things for your agents that they're not using, that they're not taking advantage of, and you're overloaded on staff that you don't need, that becomes a problem. So definitely we did a shift of that, of using technology in a much different light. For communication, we do love Workplace, Facebook Workplace. That has worked really well, where people are able to engage and share. I know a lot of online tech companies, they use that as well. That has worked really well for us.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting topic on its own, about the ability to do within the office communication. Brad's using, he said, is using, what is it, Slack, and Tiffany, you're using Facebook Workplace. Interesting. Gretchen, I wanted to give you a chance to get in here. You founded Drysdale about 17 years ago. You were named by the California Association as it was the largest woman-owned company in the state of California, big state, California. What are some of the technologies that you have used to facilitate your growth?
Well, thank you very much. As I appreciate being on here and a chance to talk some. Like Tiffany, I'm a relatively young company. The first piece, the boring piece, is you've got to figure out what kind of back-end accounting system that you use. We started when we were littler just with Word, Microsoft Office, and Excel, and we've moved to Real Ledger, and you'll need that. We have then also a product that's not Boomtown. It's what we call kind of a bucket opportunity. We have a footprint that spans different marketplaces from San Francisco out into Sacramento and out to the foothills, as well as then product mix. And we needed to be able to have really an opportunity for the agents to go in and have a bevy of things, but really for them to go in and use what was appropriate in that marketplace. And we're partnered right now with IDC as that. And then interesting enough, as you brought it, Joe, around to internal communications, we certainly, our marketing department and different departments are using Slack considerably, and the offices seem to be, so it varies on who it is. The offices use a bunch of the Facebook pieces, but one interaction that we've found and really have perfected and just love it is jot forms. And yeah, the basic piece of jot forms, and we're able to straight away, take requests and orders and, workflow as a handoff on jot form. If our agents we have their attention for 3 minutes to answer our questions on the jot form as they got that listing done, now we can run. And it was for them, and they didn't have to really go anywhere or learn anything else. So that's been a godsend, really, jot form. So
some interesting, I will say some unusual kind of general interest technologies that you've all mentioned. Brad mentioned Boomtown is something that he uses particularly for client communications and deal and all that, lead generation. But he talked about and Brokerment for back office. But then we've had conversations about Prezi for presentations, the jot form, about Slack. I mean, these are programs that are used across industries, but you're finding them useful in real estate, not just the real estate specific technologies that you'll find at conferences and things like that. So let me I want to throw a question out to the group and take it where you want to take it. The title of the panel is how to handle tech overload. What do you think, when we talk about tech overload, what are we talking about? And how and why do you think real estate professionals experience it? Anybody?
I can go first.
Go ahead.
How you handle tech overload, I think a bottle of bourbon would be the first solution for that one. It's been by trial and error. And, my history in this industry, we were some of the first platforms, some of you guys, the Web Top and Agent Achieve and pushing all that stuff early on. And I have my experience with real estate agents, why they're very effective real estate agents is that they don't really like change, and so they administer change through everyone else. And so you cannot give too much change. And we get very excited as leaders about where we're taking the company or where the decisions we've made, and it's too much. I think I've got web connections all quiet up.
No, I was able to hear you. That's certainly one of the real challenges, is that there is so much out there and you want to share it with the agents. I mean, you'll go to a conference and you'll find 5 things that you want to bring to the company. But the question is, if you bring all 5 things, it's like trying to get, 5 people in the same doorway at the same time. They're all going to collide with each other. No one's going to get through. Brad, Tiffany, what do you think of, what's your experience with tech overload, and how do you think agents experience it?
Yeah, I think there's just an abundance of options, right? There's a tech tool that does something in so many different aspects of the industry. And I think the biggest problem agents or brokers have is they treat it like shiny objects. Oh, that sounds cool. Maybe I can make that work for me. And I think that's the biggest problem, is the make that work for me statement of that. It probably is really cool tech, but having to make it work for you is probably the wrong approach. I think it's better for agents or brokers or anyone in the industry to have a problem that they're seeking to solve, and then make sure that piece of tech solves that problem before they even consider adding it to it and trying to make it work. So I think the biggest problem is they don't know how to define their own problems.
Yeah. In other words, look
at the landscape of options and they're just overwhelmed.
The way I often think about it is that, and I think this is true in a lot of aspects of business, is that you got to start with the demand. What's the demand? What is it that you need? Because if you start with the supply, it's the same thing when you're starting a business. You may say, hey, I have this great technology that does X. That's really good, and you might be able to get funding for it because people might say, oh my God, the technology is really awesome and whatnot. But then if you haven't ever thought about, well, how are people going to use it and why do they need it? You're going to have a problem. And the same thing, the worst type of technologies I have found in real estate or anything else are technologies that all of a sudden compel you or need you to do something that you've never done before. Like, you've never done.
One of the things I would say is I think brokers, we look at it from a different perspective than agents. I think that's the first thing. You got to understand what's great to you is not going to be great to the agent. So it looks great and it feels great, but in reality, you got to focus on the tech that people are actually going to use that is going to generate income. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, is how do you generate money? And especially in a changing market where we're shifting. So what we really focus on are a couple things. So we do use buy side, which gives basically a guesstimate of the home values. That's a big thing for us. That's a great tool. We pay for it as a company. That is very beneficial. We are heavy on using market insight. That's something with the Houston Association of Realtors, kind of like Market Snapshot, but it's a lot more in-depth because it's through our association and realtors have basically put their input on it. So we have it for buyers and for sellers. So we can set people up and we do this. It's tech that we're already paying for, because you're paying for a bunch of stuff already through your memberships. So we're already paying HAR. So through that, we get to use this tool that normally would cost $100 or $200 a month just for one side. We get both sides. And so we're leveraging that by letting people see the values of not just their properties, but properties, ranges of the properties in the area, and getting basically an internal dashboard of what we look at, which is so unique of anything that they could find on Zillow or Realtor.com, any of that stuff. We're giving it to them, and we're the driving force behind it, which is a big thing because they still need us. But I think when you talk about tech, there's so many great options out there, and there's so many things that do amazing things. But as a brokerage, you will be out of a ton of money and buying things that the agents do not want to pay for and are not underusing, because it's not something that they need every day. And that's a huge component. We purchase websites for our agents, and we want that for our company, and we have that. But we can look at the algorithms on how many times they log in and how much they're actually using this stuff, and it's very low. And so when you look at all these latest and greatest products, most of them are charging per head. You're paying per person. So that's money that's going out of your door, out of the gates for something that's barely being used.
Yeah,
We
that's
have-
always,
We have
that's always, go ahead.
I was just
Yeah,
gonna say, we have an internal agreement that we can't add one to our stack unless we cut one from our stack.
I like that.
The and that raises a good question in terms of how companies price their offerings, because a real estate brokerage is often made up of lots of bodies that may or may not be engaging in real estate on a day-to-day basis. So when you got pricing that's based on people, either heads or people that log in during the month, you might end up paying for a lot of people that aren't using it in any realistic way. What are some of the ways in which you've found, building up on Tiffany's point, what are some of the ways that you've preferred to, when people are pricing technology for you, that you have found to be more workable for your particular needs, particular situations?
That's a great question.
Like a flat fee or something where, it has to be used a certain number of times, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, for me, it's interesting because there's a product that we use that answers kind of the first question: where do you go with the technology or your spend? And I follow the purses. Where my agents are paying already have reached and found it. They've already found value in it. And so can I lean into what already works for them? And yes, I can't be scattered, all over on it, but that's, where you look to then go ahead and put it. I forget the second piece you were asking there, Joe, in the way of the, that's where you need to go and then lean into it. We had a product where in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, Disclosures.io was really starting to be the standard operating procedure, and it's away from listing tools. And their pricing was only company-wide, enterprise-wide, and it was not, and it's expensive in my opinion. It's certainly valuable, but it's expensive for a broker. And they would not do it based on users. It was enterprise-wide. And that's tough when, to your point, Joe, when it does even change a workflow. The agents bought into it so much they were changing even their workflow for this product. So that's how powerful it was. But that means, in the Central Valley, in Sacramento, they didn't want to even give it a go at the beginning. They are now, and it's seeping over there. But in the meantime, for the last year and a half, I'm loving to hate that product. I'm hating it and I'm loving it, and I'm hating it and I'm loving it. And that's not a great relationship with a broker.
No, it isn't. Anybody else have any other experiences, similar experiences with that?
So basically what I've seen, Joe, is they're charging per head. Now, you coming in out of the gates, if you're signing up for the first time, some of them are willing to give you a discount off that first year, off the overall. So that's what I've been seeing. But pretty much we've seen a lot of companies want to charge per head.
Brad, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think just to reference the tools I mentioned earlier, I think Slack has a nice pricing model where it's per active user per month. So they're reviewing every past 30 days to see who's been active and billing for that amount of users. So the inactive don't get billed, and it's constantly being refreshed monthly. I like that model from a pricing standpoint. That's not popular in the real estate industry. Real estate industry is either enterprise or per seat kind of model. I do like the tiered approach as well, when you can't do it all one way or the other. It's per seat for X amount of users, and then you go up and you crash through a threshold, and then the next block of users is cheaper per seat, and as you keep adding on, it gets cheaper per seat. That is a Boomtown method that works pretty well for us. I think that's fair without going to just the active user per month thing.
Yeah, and let's flip around, because Tiffany made the point, and I think we've all kind of made the point that, like, you don't want to pay for people that are not using the technology. But on the other hand, the way to flip that around is to say, well, the way it becomes more cost effective is if you get more people to use this technology that you're paying all this money for. So let's turn to that question, which is, what are some of the best practices that you have followed or you've seen in the industry about how to get your agents actually on board these? Gretchen kind of referenced the idea that, well, one of the ways is don't overload them with too much in the stack. So something comes on, something's got to come off. It's the old Warren Buffett rule that I will invest in 10 stocks and 10 stocks only. And if I find a stock I want to buy, I got to sell one that I like the least and put it into the portfolio. So you want this technology, you want people to use it. What are some of the practices you've used to actually get adoption in your company?
So for us, we actually brought on contract a tech trainer who basically was my trainer when I first started in real estate. So she does private consulting for different companies. And so we brought her on anytime we introduce a new product or tech software into our company, we bring her in to train on it. And so she's very outgoing personality, really involved, keeps people engaged, a participatory style trainer. Where they're actually participating as she's going. So that way we make sure that they're actually using the product, learning the product as they're being trained. So having somebody, I think it's so critical. If you're going to introduce new technology in your company, you can't just introduce it and not properly train people on it, or either show it to them one time and it's an afterthought and you just kind of think that they're going to keep on using it, because we all know that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Anybody else, Gretchen?
Yeah, two things. First off, through my years of being really at the line in a lot of regards, you know, the companies always taught the managers, and that's just not what really to do. You know that the office administrator is the one that's there when the agent's brave enough to use the technology from the class they just sat at. The manager's off doing an appointment or whatever. And so we started years ago with even hiring a different type of office administrator that was not so real estate focused, so to speak. We didn't think that that was the value. We wanted someone open to change and able to teach and train and adapt into technologies. And so they're, excuse me, a good backup. But what we've also learned is that we've set up through marketing and technology departments a Calendly, and we have, I forget the total amount of hours, but one-on-ones. And the agents will just log on to Calendly and they will be working through. And whether it's someone when we just hire them and we recommend just setting up an hour session, one a week for the first 8 weeks and pounding through, we can then get the customized what tool is working for what they've been doing in their business and that they want to now learn. And we can move them along quickly with the homework assignments, but we also, we have all the classes and the trainings and all of that. But when someone really wants to get in and make a difference, they want someone riding along with them. They're still people. They're not technologists. And so if we can put a people person on explaining the technology to them, it's a win. And that's how we've slowly crawled up usage.
Yeah, one of the things that always drives me crazy is when
they're not in real estate. That's the best way to go.
Yes, that's right. One of the things that always drives me nuts when agents say, well, I don't know how to use that program. I'm like, well, have you actually opened the program and tried to use it? Because a lot of these programs are they're not rocket science. If you're at all like sort of comfortable with technology at any level and you spend half an hour just clicking on buttons and seeing what happens, you can generally figure out most of these programs. So like, I hate when people tell me that like, I don't know how to use this. Well, have you tried? If you don't know that you don't know how to use it until you've actually tried and you failed. What are some of your adoption, Brad, what's some of your adoption best practices?
I think Gretchen and Tiffany hit on it. I think the leadership has to use it first, whether it's the trainer, the owner, the office manager, whatever the leader is, they have to use it. You can't just outsource onboarding for your agents. I think a lot of times the vendor is responsible for onboarding the agent, and I think that's the riskiest way to do it. I think it's better for you to do it in-house, build your own training, use it first so you know what to do. Take some of the content that the vendor may deliver and then make it your own words, your own version. We even shoot our own training videos, put them into our own training process, and then onboard our agents. I think that's the better way to do it because it comes from within and it's honest and it's authentic. And it doesn't feel like this is being forced on me from some outside thing.
Yeah, well, since we're talking from that perspective, Bridget, I'm curious as to what Boomtown's experience in terms of how they see best practices, because I agree with Brad that you don't want to just leave it to the provider to do it. You need to do some of that in-house, but I know that when we've had successful rollouts of technology with our agents, it's tended to be a little bit of a group effort that we will kind of see what they've got, as Brad said, take some of their materials, but also like, I mean, a lot of these companies have really good trainers themselves, and I'll bring them in because to some extent, as opposed to being someone from the outside, it's almost like they want to hear the agents from somebody who's external, who will who's sort of like, who sells them on it, who does that every day. So Bridget, what are some of the best practices you've seen companies adopt?
Yeah, so just like Tiffany, Gretchen, and Brad mentioned, I have seen a lot of different models where brokerages will hire a specific admin or technology expert to help train on site. So I have seen that happen a lot. But as far as being from a vendor's perspective and working at Boomtown, I'll just from our experience, we offer on-site trainings, virtual trainings, and we take pride in how big our client success team is. We have over 400 people on our client success side, and they're there to make sure that they're following up with the brokers, the agents, scheduling weekly, monthly syncs, and making sure that they're staying up to date with all the technology updates because, I mean, as we've seen, technology continues to change day to day, week to week, month to month. So making sure that they're on top of that, and it's so easy to get inundated with emails and notifications and, you know, quickly glance over that, but it's never as effective as actually having that phone call or that video chat or scheduling on-site trainings, which we do. And then for our users, we also offer an annual user conference every single year that allows everyone using this, you know, Boomtown to mastermind and network together and share their own experiences because everyone's at a different level. Everyone's leveraging certain tools differently. It helps to learn from like-minded people using this similar technology. So that's just a couple offerings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think adoption. Listen, the key to all of this is adoption. If you're, you know, better to have a, you know, good technology that everyone's using than a great technology that no one's using. I mean, that's really the key to it. What do you look for when you're going to bring a new technology to your company? What are some of the things that characteristics of a company that you would find attractive or important, or the technology itself?
I think I hinted on it earlier, like, is it solving a problem I have? And identifying your own needs-based analysis and, you know, make sure that it solves that problem. And then assuming that it does, and you want to consider the next step, like, is it easy to adopt is one of my first ones. Like, is the user experience good? You know, there are many ways to solve a problem, but if the user experience while you're solving it's atrocious, then no one's want to go through that process. So you want to make it user friendly. Is it intuitive? Can you, like you said, Joe, just click around and figure it out, right? If that feels possible, then those are two really good signs. It solves a problem, it's easy to figure out, but then you also want to make sure, and you've hinted at, is there support available? Is this vendor able to support my problems at scale? And that scale is kind of that fourth piece. And what happens if I grow? Do I outgrow this? Can this grow with my company? And that sort of thing. So those are kind of the four lenses I look for: that scale, support, and, you know, the user friendliness, and does it solve my problem?
I love that. One of pretty much everything that Brad just said, and another thing that we look for is this going to be attractive to our agents? Is this something that they're going to see value in that our company provides that other people may not? Is it going to do that? That's the first thing. And the second thing is it going to make their experience with the consumer more efficient? Because that's the bottom line. And I always tell our people, anytime that you are doing anything, it should be for the benefit of the consumer. That's your client and who you serve. You don't exist without them. We don't exist without them. So is that, whatever that product is it going to be attractive to the agent to put their hands on, to continue to put their hands on, let's say that? And if so, is it going to make their experience with their clients more efficient?
And I take a mashup of the two. There's got to be an issue. You don't need to go out and just go shopping. So you've got an issue that is there. And then, excuse me, after you've gone out, then you need to go ahead and try to get it married on in. And I think that the continual work as it is, you'll see and follow up, but not going out just to create it, seeing where the issue is, and then seeing how you can bring it in.
Interesting. I mean, I think those are all legitimate criteria when you're looking at some of these companies that you know, I think I know what we do a lot of is, I mean, we look to our peers as who's using it and who's having experience, like what have their experiences been like? I mean, I think that's important. I'm sure that like companies like Boomtown take that very seriously to make sure that they've got a validation network of people who are using the program effectively that will vouch for it with other people. Let me turn to a new question because I'm curious to hear, I want to ask you two sides of it. I want to ask you first, if you can think of, and if we want to kind of reiterate something you've already talked about, what's the best technology decision you made since you started your company in terms of the most impact on the company and why? And then I'm going to flip it around and ask you, what's the worst one you've made? What's the biggest mistake you made with regards to technology? So that'll be more fun, always more fun talking about mistakes. But tell me first about a really good decision you made that you're proud of that went really well, had a big impact on your company.
Well, I'll start. The one that we're most excited about is a new partnership that we have that's actually costing us nothing is Curbio. So it's definitely tech focused where you can transform digitally a property from start to finish, and they actually come in and do all of the work. And they have this amazing app where you can follow as an agent. They can follow along to see the improvements and the repairs or renovations that are being done to the client's home. I know a few years ago, like when certain companies came out with the concierge program and everybody else didn't have it, it just kind of, it was pushing us night and day. But I feel like that has definitely come in and leveraged the playing field, and being able to take a part of something like that and not having to pay for it and having that back end of service available to your clients. And then for certain markets, they do send out, if they have clients, it's a partnership where the seller has to have a realtor. So if they don't have a realtor, they have to use a realtor. So they are referred to an agent, a broker in Curbio's market. So that has been very advantageous. I think we've received 9 opportunities from them already in the short amount of time that we've been signed up. So that was a no-brainer. I would say the thing that we have most underused, I would say, as a company has been our company website. And that's just because we've seen the shift in the marketplace, not just because of what we just came out of, but just where things are going in the world in general. We're seeing social media have a huge impact where people are using that as not only a communication tool, but as an advertising tool. So they're not just necessarily buried on the website. So now you see the listings on social media with links to get back to certain things. So we're switching the focus of just having a website that just sits to actually using it as a platform or a landing page for social media advertisements that we're pushing back into the site just for people to find listings. But the listings are already being filtered out on social media, which has been a big, tremendous change. And we're seeing agents market themselves in a whole new light on social media and drawing all types of business from that platform. So I would say our website, because it's not, unlike Boomtown, it's not one that drives leads or drives activity or is actually doing the Google ads or the Google buy. So that's been the biggest thing. That's been the thing that I would say that we've spent the most amount of money on. That's the least amount used.
What you said that's the one that's the biggest mistake you made was the latter one.
The latter one. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what
I really would call it a mistake because I feel like you do need an online presence. I do believe in that, but that's the one that is not generating any income.
Okay, and the one you mentioned that was the best, just spell it for people because they're asking about it.
Is CURBIO. It's called
CURBIO.
Curbio. And they will do anything from a major renovation of a property to simply just changing carpet and painting the interior, landscaping. And what's great is I've always had in my business my own team of people that we like to use in terms of stagers, renovations, and things like that. Those people can apply to be vendors of Curbio. So if you already have good people in place, they can apply to be a part of that program, and they can still be your vendor, but under that umbrella where it is completely managed and operated by someone different with a project manager for the project, where the agent or the broker is not having the liability, and the client is obligated to list for 1 year with that brokerage and that agent in order to be a part of that program. So it's not going to be which we have this issue to happen. It's not going to be a love it or list it type of thing. Like you get your house fixed up and then you decide, oh, I don't want to sell it, I want to keep it, because that happens. But it's a great program where they have their own contracts in place that have already been done by their legal team and so on. So that has been very advantageous for us, and it's cost us absolutely nothing.
Good. Okay. Brad or Gretchen, what's the biggest success you've had? What's the best decision you've made?
Well, I'll just piggyback on Tiffany because I think it's kind of a good contrast. I think our website's the best thing we've done. And it is powered by Boomtown. That would make Boomtown the best tool, but our website is the place where all of our lead behavior is directed. And I think that's where Boomtown excels. It is a behavior-based platform. So it's not what the lead says they're going to do. It's like, I'm not interested in moving, and yet they're favoriting properties every day. And we see that behavior on the back end of our website. Like, now we know who to reach out to first. We know what property to talk to them about. We know what property to go research, gather disclosures. We're already coming with value to add to that consumer experience, all thanks to the insight that Boomtown gives us. So obviously I'm biased here. It's probably why Bridget asked me, but I didn't get paid to say it, but Boomtown is absolutely my favorite tool. It's essential.
Well, and I think that's a big thing what you just said, Brad. And I think that goes back to the audience, that if they're going to be bringing on a website company and they want to do lead generation from that, it has to be a company that has experience with that and have the capacity to actually do that, because all websites are not created equal. And it just depends on what you want to use them for, because that's a big thing. I know previously, when I was an agent, I used Boomtown some years ago, and still today, I would say they had the best CRM that I've ever seen, because that's exactly what they do, and they know how to engage the audience, and they know how to place ads on Google when you're trying to attract certain things. So I would say from a tech standpoint, if you want a website that just kind of sits there and have an online presence, that's one thing. But if you want one that's going to drive leads and revenue, then you're going to have to look for specific companies.
Yeah. Gretchen, what's your best decision?
I think the best decision was to start internally. If you're looking for a solution in the way of what is the priorities and what is the problems, because you get sold really easily. And so, and you don't need the overkill. So getting clear internally with whether it's all stakeholders on what it is that you need, and then going out, just as we've talked about, to find it, because it can't be you can't be everything to everyone. So what is the priority? And the brokerage's margins are so little. We typically also then try to measure it up against the impact of the trifecta. How does this help our current agents in their productivity? How does it help us recruit and attract talent? And how does it help us sell properties? And if it can hit all trifecta on any of those spends, then we're interested in it. But don't get sold first. And I think that's probably the worst decision, is that allowing my tech department to make a decision. They, talked me into an app not very long ago, which, I kept saying everyone's so far down the flipping road on that, and oh no, and he's a millennial, and oh no, and love him to death. But no, I'm not going to have the tech department talk me into something we need anymore.
The calculus I always use on that, and we really decided years ago, because in our company, our commission plan used to include like a whole bunch of stuff. As you hit a level, you got this, and you got, it wasn't just split raise, it would be split plus you would get, convention, you would get PA time, you would get this, you would get that. And we finally got rid of all that because we were getting hammered by the fact that other people had superficially higher splits. We had lower splits, but there was a lot of stuff built into it. So you know what? People don't really, if they don't want that stuff, it's not worth it to them. So just give them the higher split. If they want to hire a PA, they will. And then like literally a year after we did that, we came up with the great idea of buying everybody an iPad because we thought really good for people to have iPads when they do presentations. This is like 10 years ago when people didn't all have their own iPads. And then we looked at ourselves and said, wait a second, we're doing the same thing we always do, which is that we're making the decision for the age about what technology they should adopt. And they'd much rather just have the money and make the decision themselves. And so my calculation on this stuff is always like, all right, if I'm going to spend the money on this, and it's money that could otherwise be used to raise splits for the agents, are the agents going to value it as much as they would value a raise in the split? If the answer is no, then I don't want to do it. I think that'd be a terrible mistake because, like you say, I think Gretchen, if it's not, it might have been Tiffany, Gretchen, if it's not selling houses, if it's not recruiting, if it's not making me money, then it's a technology. It's probably more distraction than anything else. Or I would add, if it's not helping me comply with the law in a way that will keep me from, getting my business shut down or myself put in jail, then I would not adopt it. Brad, I didn't get your biggest mistake. I want to make sure I'll give you a chance to. What's the Gazelle? Come on, bare your soul. What's the biggest mistake you've made, and what happened with it?
Yeah, without naming names, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, right? But I did buy an open house tool that was designed to, I thought it was going to, solve my problem of getting people to register at the open house, right? Yeah. But it ultimately ended up being more frustrating than a piece of paper would have been. I'd have been better just getting them to sign the old piece of paper, bringing it back home and typing it into Boomtown than trying to configure this new tool to just get them, on the iPad to type and all of that. So I think that was probably the biggest mistake of trying to roll out this new technology just to solve an open house form problem that I could have done on Boomtown's website if I'd have just thought deeper,
I can't tell you how many to-do list apps I have tried, and I still use one, but I use it mostly to log things that I don't want to forget. I say I make sure I got to do a reminder list more than anything else. But like when I make my to-do list every morning on a piece of lined paper, and I get the satisfaction of crossing it out. And when it's done, I crumple it up and I throw it away. And like people are like, well, how do you keep track of like things you did last week? I'm like, if I did it last week, it's done. I don't need to do it. I don't need to know what I did last week. I just need to know what I need to do this week. All right, we're running up against we have a few minutes left. And I did want to get from you some perspective advice. Let's say there's a broker in the audience, somebody who is starting up a company, facing these decisions. What's the one piece of advice or the most important piece of advice you would share with them as they start to build their technology stack for their company?
I'll piggyback on what Tiffany, I think, said earlier, is like, think consumer first. Think like, will this make a better consumer experience? Will this attract more consumers? I think consumer first and then work backwards. You'll never go wrong trying to please the consumer.
That's awesome. It. And I would say talk to other brokers that are similar to where you are. I think that's where a lot of people make mistakes. Talk to people at different stages of their careers because one size doesn't fit all. I think that's so critical. And two, you want to do that because listening to your agents is great and you want to do that, but they don't, they always say they want this and they want that, but we all know most times they never use it. So your main point of contact or focus should be talking to other brokers who's been there and done that so that you're not making the same mistakes. Because oftentimes, our agents, they don't know what they want until you actually show it to them. And even when you do that, some of those things they're not going to use. So I always say, focus on the bottom line and you can never go wrong. Focus on things that are going to move your needle. That's the bottom line.
Gretchen, any piece of advice?
I'd say the same. We have to be just so mindful because of the margins being there. And we also know that there is timeliness of things. And I find myself not meaning to have backhanded compliment for us brokers, but in some regards, right, we anticipated this market coming. And so, 6 or 7 months ago, you've got to remember it's all about timing. We probably actually even a year and a half ago, we built this fabulous sellers report, and it gathered up all the marketing piece, and I couldn't get anybody's attention for the life of me. I didn't think. I do know that they know there's this thing called the sellers report now. And so it comes around. And so don't get frustrated as a leader. You're a leader. You are anticipating different changes, and you may be slightly in front. And it may not be, yes, when we've talked a lot about abandoning. We were part of, early on with Zavvi and the iBuyer piece. Well, I'll tell you what, I couldn't get my top hitters' attention for an iBuyer for the life of me for the last 2 years. And we've done 28 trainings to the same people. And I would leave that. People are people. It takes 7 times minimally for somebody to hear something. And if it's really out of a spectrum because they've gone in a route, this is how they've done it. And Joe, as you said, this is how they've done it, and it's worked and it's been successful. And so I don't need to go look yet. And so no, your job is to lead, and there's a timing and a place when the student is ready, I think is how that one goes.
I love it.
Okay, Tiffany, please go ahead.
And I would say the last piece that I wanted to add is leverage your partnerships. I know we have something that's called List Hubs that we get from one of the local lenders here. And I know that software is expensive and we're not paying for it. But in exchange for co-branding, we're able to use it on certain properties, on certain things. So there are companies out there that support your business where it is within legal regulations, because we have to do that. But leverage your partnerships. There are people that we're all eyeing for the same business, the same client. That client is going to need a mortgage. That client is going to need insurance. That client is going to need a variety of things. So leverage partnerships in your market with companies that benefit from you.
The all great pieces of advice. We got 2 other pieces of advice that came through the chat, so I'm just going to share them. Janan Ardia said, become familiar with it from the eyes of an agent. Before you adopt something, you should try to use it as an agent yourself to see how it plays in real world. And then Anita Polito shares a story that she bought an auto letter program. I'm not sure what an auto letter program is, although there's lots of different programs that write letters for you. And none of the letters said what she would say, so she canceled, which I think that's a problem that a lot of us have. I'll ask, we had 2 questions about specific companies. If anybody has any other comments that they've had experience with this company. So personal experience with this company, I've gotten 2 questions about that from the audience. One of them was Buffini and Company, my friend Brian Buffini, Dermot Buffini, and their company, which is has a really good tool for referral management, and obviously has a whole training program built around that. Anybody have experience working with them that they want to share?
No.
All great. Yeah, all great. I mean, it's any of the trainers. We're agnostic, but Buffini's organization, particularly since COVID's made it easy to do 100 Days to Greatness and some of their other branded trainings to scale.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I have agents that swear by it. My wife, when she was an agent, I said, come with me, and we went to a Buffini program. I'm a big fan, and I'm a big fan of a lot of the national trainers. I think they do good work. I also got a question from Melinda on SkySlope. Is anybody using SkySlope?
yes,
No?
we are.
Any comments one way or the other that you want to share?
Well, I'm known to be frank, and I'm fortunately you'll call me Frank at the end of this webinar. SkySlope, our opinion right now is not listening to their users and needs to. They have a product and they have market share in our area. It is a backbone. Almost everybody uses SkySlope. It's kind of the standard operating in our area. And where we as brokers have been trying to, here's one pet peeve, and maybe this will get enough embarrassment to get some action to it, but in our area, we don't typically use buyer representative agreements. And the state, as well as all the memberships and the brokers, are trying to get that as a practice and in place. And their transaction management is it's myopic, it's only listing side only, and I can't even put a buyer rep agreement in there, and I've had to jerry rig it, and they don't care. So hopefully they will help because they're the majority of the users. I think you pretty much people use SkySlope out here. I'm not sure where that question came from, but it's
Yeah, it's from Melinda Urena.
in what area?
I didn't say, oh, Miami. She's from Miami. So I think that's good feedback. I think that you're using it, and obviously you're having some success with it, and you're using it, but there's some limitations that you think they got to pay attention to, which I think a lot of us would say about a lot of the programs. I mean, I think familiarity with the program, often raises you see the limitations a lot more clearly. All right, I'm gonna leave it there with the questions from the audience. I want to ask one quick 30 seconds or less from all of you, a takeaway. It can be something you want to reiterate. It could be something new. It could be something you want to say, you want to talk about, anything you want. 30 seconds, free time. I'll start with when we went through Brad. You went first. So Brad, give me a 30-second takeaway, anything you want to share.
Sure, I'll just reiterate, Boomtown's the best front office software available. I freaking love it. My favorite part about it right now is it's got an integration with our back office program, which is BrokerMint. I do all compliance for every contract written, and we pay all commissions processing through BrokerMint. Those are the two key tools. I can run the entire brokerage probably with just that alone. So I think from a tech standpoint, those are the best tools that I know of right now from a front office and back office standpoint. And I would say from growing my company and the piece of software that's made us better outside of those two is Trainual. We use that to train new agents, reference and research almost like a living Wikipedia for our local market for all experienced agents. And everybody has one place to go to, whether it's on the web or in their pocket as an app. And that Trainual tool is super valuable. I didn't get a chance to mention it today, and it's fantastic.
All right, Gretchen.
Yeah, I love that you switched with Trainual. CAR, California Association of Realtors, is probably 2-month-old stat, but they made a mention at a conference I was at that they believe only 11% of their members know how to do a price reduction.
Wow.
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 With that in mind,
they're all new to business, right?
Yeah, exactly. With that in mind, and my comment about when the student is ready, we as brokers have an opportunity because there's a lot of students that are ready right now with their head open. And whether it is, yes, going back to figure out how to do owner carries and assumptions and VAs and all of that stuff, but also in this topic we've talked about today, there's folks that will be willing to go ahead and sit down and be vulnerable if they're the long in the tooth or blue hairs of this business, to learn something in the technology that'll help their business and help their clients. So don't give up on them. It is the season. We have plenty of students right now to try to get them on board and make a better experience for the consumers, and that's where our focus needs to be, and then thereby for them. So thank you very much for having me on.
And Tiffany, your final takeaway.
My final takeaway is something that I'm going to switch it up a bit. Visit a local innovation or tech hub in your market. Visit one and take some of your agents with you so they can see where things are headed, where people are going. I don't think you really understand. In real estate, we oftentimes get caught up in what we think because we're in our own little world, we're in our own cocoon. But when you step outside of it, in a lot of the major cities now, they have these innovation hubs, which are tech centers, and they're every major company. I know here in Houston, Microsoft, our innovation hub, before it was even ready, Microsoft had rented out an entire floor. Chevron, with their tech people, they rented out an entire floor. Take your people into this space. First, as a broker, you need to go into this space and see where things are headed in this life. I think that's the biggest thing, because that's a whole nother eye-opening window. When you see that, it's going to change the way you think about everything. You're going to rethink everything that you've ever thought about, because you're going to see where the world is going, and it's in a much different place than in what's been in our own little window. So I think that's going to be a big thing going forward. See where things are headed.
All right, Tiffany, great advice. I love that. I love all the advice we got today. I want to thank all the panelists, Gretchen, Brad, and Tiffany. Thank you for being part of it. My thanks to Boomtown for sponsoring today, and for all the very helpful information that we got from them. And I want to remind you all, my takeaway is the RIS Media 2022 CEO and Leadership Exchange is in Washington, DC this year. It's got a great lineup. If you look at the different panels, it's a huge array of content from September 6th to 8th, right after Labor Day, coming up next month. So I hope a lot of you will be able to make it. Otherwise, my best wishes to all of you for the remainder of our summer, and my best wishes for happy Labor Day, and for some of us getting back to work after Labor Day. Some of us on the call are already in work, but good to have. Oh, Bridget, there you are. Bridget, I want to thank you personally. I didn't see your screen, but
Thank you.
Thank you for sponsoring today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Tiffany, Brad, and Gretchen, and Joe. I really appreciate it. It was a great webinar. It'll be
Thank you,
recorded so everyone can watch it after.
Yep. Make sure you tell your friends, watch the video. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for being a part of today's webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.